Are you thinking about buying medicine online? A search for online pharmacies yields more than 20 million results. But which ones can you trust? Medicines bought from unlicensed online pharmacies can be dangerous. You may get a fake drug, your condition may get worse, or you may experience a bad reaction. Don't put your health at risk. To learn how to find an online pharmacy that's safe and legal, visit fda.gov/BeSafeRx. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer? The drug facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the drug facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/drug facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Welcome. You're listening to Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki. This is the place where witty, irreverent, opinionated perspective meets serious, fact-based discussion. Featuring our host, Dr. Nikki Coleman, and her co-host, Tomas Bell. You can also join in the discussion during our live tapings by following us on Spreaker.com. Now, the doctor is in. It's time to get Doopy Deep.
Good day, good Friday. I'm so excited to be here. This is really exciting because we're having a roundtable conversation. So I get to have some better company on the podcast besides just my usual co-host.
What you ain't gonna do?
Already started.
What you ain't
it's already out there.
Gonna do? Hold on. Let me do this right. What you ain't gonna do? I had to sip some minty fresh water because you're trying to come for me. First of all, we still in Pride Month. I told you, you are prohibited from throwing shade at me from June 1st to June 30th each year.
Nope. Shade is the language of your people. I'm trying to connect with you. Shade is the
language, and we speak it fluently. And in today's podcast, we'll be speaking it bilingually, trilingually.
I love it. So on this Good Friday, the last Friday of Pride Month, we are going to have what I'm calling an intersectional LGBTQ plus conversation on Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki, and I'm really excited about it. What I really wanted to do was highlight the experiences and narratives of people of color who are also members of the LGBTQ community. I do consider myself an ally. I don't know if I meet your ally standards or not, Tomas, after all these years of friendship.
It really depends upon the day.
Okay.
Sometimes you're an ally. Sometimes you're just. I'm just. You stay an ally. You stay an ally.
And so, as an ally, who, as I've talked about before, and it's no surprise, I'm also a woman of color. I think I sit in a unique position in relationship to these two specific communities. And one of the things in my observation has been that there is an increasingly kind of whitewashed, gay-centric, sometimes even sanitized portrayal of the community for mainstream consumption. And what I mean by that is I walked into Target, I think 3 years ago, and saw an entire Pride installation. It was Pride M&Ms, Pride sunglasses, Pride T-shirts, Pride underwear, Pride pajamas.
I do not want Pride M&Ms in my mouth.
I'm telling you,
to be
it was
very
everything.
Clear.
It was everything.
I just don't want it.
I feel like they found everything that resembled a rainbow and put it in one display.
Why do we need Pride M&Ms when we got Skittles? I have Pride every time I pop a Skittle in my mouth.
Because chocolate is delicious. That's why.
We will not. Let's go back to the Wakanda Forever podcast to know that is true and very much appreciated on Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki.
Snap. And so it was really striking to me. And I remember I had this kind of conflicting reaction on a couple different levels. One, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, Target. Okay, get your LGBTQ life. I appreciate this. On the other end, I was like, I I see capitalism's shadow here, and I don't really know if that is the way to go. And then, quite honestly, as a Black woman, I thought, I've never seen a Black History Month installation here at Target. And so it's
Wait a minute. Hold on. Are you trying to tell me you want some red, black, and green M&Ms?
I do.
Okay.
I would buy them at bulk. I would have them at both offices, multiple floors of the home. It would be all about the red, black, and green M&Ms. And so I wanted to have, so the whole purpose is that kind of have a conversation. I think there are a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of myths that are perpetuated, stereotypes, maybe even that happen within communities of color about folks that are lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, or anywhere on the sexual minority spectrum. And I also think there are stereotypes about people of color within the LGBTQ community that always don't get talked about. And then I think there's also some space in the LGBTQ community for folks that just don't fit the mainstream. And I wanted to have an opportunity to have a conversation to highlight those voices. And so Tomas and I kind of talked about who we thought would be great folks to have in that conversation. And I wanted there to kind of be a little bit of, to the extent possible, kind of a comprehensive representation of different kind of subsections of these different communities. So I'm excited to bring in our guests in a second. What I also want to share with the listeners is what I shared with the guests. And there were just 3 basic ground rules that I had. And one was, and I really need all listeners to be aware of this, that I'm only asking my guests to speak from their experiences only. And I don't expect them to be the voice of any and all communities that they represent. So this is not going to be one of those things where one person's story then represents the entire spectrum of experiences. But I do think there's a lot for everybody to learn and maybe learn from and grow in from hearing about people's specific unique experiences as representation of how they intersect these different components of their life. So that's the first ground rule. The second ground rule is also that they don't have to answer any question posed. That I have some things that I want to talk about, and they are certainly coming from my perspective about how I think this conversation should be shaped. But if there's questions that cross lines that they don't want to cross, then they are free to pass on the question. And then the third, most importantly, I hope everybody who's on the roundtable and all the listeners, if you haven't picked up on it yet, one of the things that we always try to do here on Doopy Deep is have fun. In the midst of the most complex and sometimes heavy and dark conversations, Tomas and I always are trying to find the light and always looking for opportunities to bring humor and levity to the conversation. Because at the end of the day, this is a struggle life. And if we don't find some time to laugh and be joyful about it, then it's kind of all for naught. All right. Tomas, you got anything you want to say? You usually have an opinion about things, so here's your opportunity.
I want to thank you, Heavenly Father, for shining your... I'm sorry, whenever I'm in front of a microphone, I got to break into song, and I was just feeling that. No, I really do want to thank you, Dr. Nikki, because you said something at the top of the show. You called yourself an ally. And the one thing that I know is very important is... even in the LGBTQ community, as strong as our voices are and as much as we work together and fight, and sometimes don't, and I'm sure we'll get into that later on as well, but as much as we come together to work for equality, like people think there's an agenda. I haven't gotten that memo of what the agenda is. So I don't know if that exists.
You mean you don't have access to the gay agenda? Girl, nobody gave you that. Girl,
I don't even.
They didn't see the link.
I don't even have a pink Post-it note in my collection. They are all yellow, right? So I don't know what the agenda is. But what I do know is coming together with allies and doing podcasts like this are more effective than people realize. We really are, I believe, through this work, changing people's lives, helping them to understand that there is something outside of themselves. And that's for people within the communities we're speaking about today and outside of those communities. And the other most important thing I want to bring up, and I want to thank you for doing, is making sure that everyone knew that the people represented today do not represent the totality of that expression or experience. You know, it depends. We have people representing the South, East Coast, West Coast, wherever. And though all of us in some way, shape, or form have intersected, we have different experiences. And it's so important to hear these diverse voices, even within these diverse communities. So I'm really looking forward to today.
All right. So should we just get into it?
Tone Loc said, let's do it. So let's do it.
I heard Funky Cole Medina on radio the other day, and I thought,
didn't you get your life?
This takes on I did, and then I thought, music has evolved, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm going to bring in my first guest, Dr. Ebony Butler. And what I'm doing is I'm letting them introduce themselves. I don't want to do like a formal bio sort of thing. I really am interested to hear how they think about themselves in relationship to this topic. And I'm going to let that be the guiding framework for your introduction. So, Ebony.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. So, my name is Ebony, and I identify as a lesbian, bisexual woman. I don't know if that even makes sense, but as my identity and my experiences continue to evolve, so does my identity and how I see myself. So there was a time when I did identify as completely lesbian, but now I'm kind of, as I figure out myself and become more aware of myself, I understand that I don't fit towards the most right end of that label. So that's my identity. So as far as my sexual orientation goes, I'm a Black woman. I am a psychologist. And again, as complex as our lives tend to be, so does our identities. And they've shifted for me as well. So I'm a psychologist who is interested in helping Black women recover from trauma and helping them to heal in a space that is safe and in a space that is accepting and non-judgmental. And I also am a food relationship expert. So as I've lost weight, I've learned some things about how to help other people not only lose weight, but develop a healthier relationship with food. So that is kind of like where I sit in my professional life and my sexual identity, and how I identify all around. I'm excited to be here and am open to the discussion. And I technically, and sometimes I'm just an open book, so I don't really feel like any question is off limits. I'm excited to talk about it all.
Excellent. I just have to also personally put in the plug that Ebony was one of my doctoral advisees back in the day. Yes. There was a time when me and Ebony saw each other almost every day. She was my research assistant, graduate advisee. We had conversations.
I've heard stories about you, Dr. Ebony. I know your tea, and I'm a sip a cup today.
Dr. Nikki knows and has seen me grow in a number of ways. So she's seen my identity also transform in a number of ways, from a heterosexual married woman to just a complete hot mess in the middle of it.
Wait a minute. Did you say you went from heterosexual to a hot mess?
Yeah, and it's true. It was a hot mess.
Now we need to add that. We need to add that in LGBTQ a hot mess.
Yes.
Like, it's just, that's the new one right there. That is my definition going forward on this show.
I love it. Okay, thank you, Ebony. So now we want to bring in our second guest, number 2. That would be DJ Baker. Come on through.
Oh, so do I get to pick up the Pride M&Ms now? Okay. I happen to like Pride M&Ms. Anyway.
They taste better than
I guess you could. I'm sorry. I guess you could just. I love labels. I don't mind labels at all. I was once a hetero, then I turned into a bisexual for national TV. Then I decided privately that I was just going to be gay. So I'd like to say that I'm a creative activist that happens to be a hot mess too. So I'm taking that banner also. I say creative activist because I've noticed throughout my life being creative has been my way of showing my activism. And I've always been an activist through my creative driven needs. So I guess I would say that. I'm also